now call to order the Parishwide Drainage Committee for Tuesday, March 12, 2019. Roll call, Miss Kathy.
Here.
Barris.
Here.
Mr. Guidry is stuck in traffic. He's on his way.
Here. Here. Here.
Here. Thank you for that. I'll remind everyone in the audience to please silence all electronic devices, and if you would like to speak tonight, please get your blue slip up to Miss Jessica as soon as possible. Right now we have 4 speakers, so if that's going to be all, that'll help us set our time for tonight. With that, we'll move to item number 3, receive report from staff regarding an update on input received on the report and recommendations presented to the committee in October 2018, February 2019, regarding the management and structure for drainage maintenance in the parish and take appropriate action thereon. Mr. Beam.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At your last meeting on February 26th, Alberto went through the detailed recommendations to make sure everybody was up to date. This is from the report published back in October of 2018. The main, most of those recommendations in the report are still in what was presented last week. The newer part was mainly the structure for the proposed consolidation boards as far as the 5-member and 7-member boards. But other than that, the bulk of these are pretty much the same from October. We will do a very abbreviated version of the 26th meeting tonight just because some people haven't maybe been here before. And then, of course, take any input from the public. And we are seeking committee action tonight on these proposals. But if Tom would go ahead and load the presentation. I have a couple of slides. Alberta will do the bulk after that. Reminder, this whole effort is part of a very large, comprehensive effort that started back in 2014, but officially with your approval back in May of 2015 for a drainage strategic plan with goals and strategies and principles, and this is still a part of that overall effort. More specifically, this phase, this is also part of your strategic plan, which you passed in January for the next 3 years. That's very important. This phase of study that came out in October, the drainage maintenance phase, actually began early in 2018, again, completed and prepared and submitted to you and to this committee on October 11, 2018. So that's 4 to 5 months, really good input. A lot of people have had input, and now we're at that point we feel like you can decide how you want to go forward. This is just a visual of what I've been saying, that it's very important, though. It's one phase, an important phase of a larger effort that includes better ordinances, better watershed planning, better and more capital projects, all designed for one goal: better drainage of Calcasieu Parish for today and in the future. The maintenance part has always been a plan to come to this phase. We're now in it. We've completed the study, and we feel that you have a lot of good information to decide how you want to go forward. So with that, I'm going to ask Alberto to come to the podium and hit a few of the high points. Again, these slides are not new. It's from the 26th, but he's going to do a condensed version of them.
Alberto Galan, Office of the Administrator. Like Brian said, been here before, here a couple weeks ago. We were here in 2018. So, like you said, we're seeking action on these recommendations today, and I'll try to keep it shorter. So when we look at overall drainage maintenance management, we look at a lot of key areas. When we look at efficient use of resources, the use of best information technology, consistent infrastructure, as well as operational policies. But ultimately, drainage looks at the big picture in this day and age. We're not currently operating in a coordinated manner, and we're not taking on a watershed-based approach that has long been established as the way to go when it comes to overall drainage management in a parish or county. This is nothing new. We've seen this map countless times, but it's important to see it again so that we realize that we're not managing our system in an effective way right out the gate. We're not looking at that big picture. There are areas around where some people live that have a direct impact on their drainage, but that lie within a different district's responsibility with a different level of resources that exists within that other district. there are portions of the same lateral that cross multiple district boundaries where work is taking place without necessarily considering what will happen to an area along that lateral, at a neighborhood, at a home downstream along that same lateral. So maintenance work is great, and it will always be needed. But when we have the information and technology that is simply telling us to manage our drainage and manage our watersheds in a better way, there's simply no excuse for not taking advantage of that. Providing the districts the flexibility and authority to manage watersheds instead of managing these legal boundaries that water does not recognize is a part of a better drainage management system, and as long as been established as a best practices approach to drainage management. So again, when the current system was created in the early 80s, some before that, we didn't have the information on how watersheds work and interact today. We did not have this level of growth that exists in this parish today. We did not have the demands on the infrastructure that exists today, particularly when it comes to drainage. We did not have some of the same tidal erosion, riverine, saltwater intrusion, repeated rain events, and other issues that we're experiencing today that haven't been experienced in the past. So sometimes what's happening around us forces us to take a good hard look at how we're doing things to determine if there's a better way. While doing that, it's important to take the approach of flooding in a way that gives us the best chance at success when we have the opportunity to do it. Those opportunities exist now when it comes to best practices, operations, and financially. By creating entities that accomplish a watershed approach, we can provide that legal flexibility and accomplish true watershed management. We can work to development better projects at the district level with the big picture in mind. We can tap into resources that exist today that we're fortunate enough to have available to us today and take advantage of where we are as a parish to move forward and be proactive when it comes to drainage management rather than being reactive like many other parishes are doing and like we have done sometimes in the past. So, as part of a larger comprehensive approach to drainage, we recommend a package consisting of 2 phases, and that 2 phases is very important. So, in this recommendations package for phase 1, we recommend action by the police jury to adopt recommendations when it comes to administrative and management and operations policies that have to do with finance, risk management, compliance, operations, and some centralized planning of capital projects and improvement, again, to make sure that we are taking a watershed approach into account and so that we implement consistent and efficient infrastructure across this parish. So when it comes to finance, we recommend that all the districts utilize the police jury for their financial services, with financial services to be conducted. And this is a lot to do with legal compliance, efficiency, and modernization of financial practices. When it comes to human resources, our recommendation is to update the human resources policies that exist at the district level to be in compliance with federal and state law. I've said it before, we're a public entity, these districts are a public entity. There are things that we just have to comply with when it comes to human resources, and the same goes for risk management. So for risk management, our recommendations are to update those policies that may be out of date and bring them into legal compliance that we're required to do today. In addition to that, we recommend that the districts utilize the same broker as the police jury to ensure that that it operates in a smooth manner, renews in a smooth manner, and the coverage is adequate to protect public assets. In addition to that phase 1 approach, to facilitate all of that, we recommend that the police jury take formal action to create 2 consolidated gravity drainage districts to be effective June 24th, 2019. Those consolidated districts would consist of 1, all of West Calcasieu, and the other district, all of East Calcasieu. By current law, the parish can appoint the maximum 5 commissioners for those 2 districts. Since that time, we've got a lot of input that more representation would be better for any package or recommendation moving forward. Since then, Senate Bill 11, a local bill, has been filed by Blade Morrish to accomplish this objective of expanding each of these boards to 7 members. And that only applies to consolidated gravity drainage districts that exist within Calcasieu Parish, so it is a local bill. In addition to that, within that same resolution, we think it would be prudent to include language that each of the 7 original funding streams and their dedications remain according to the way that they were levied. That's important because it is mandated by law to what the tax was called for, and it's important to go ahead and state that out front. We also recommend language that includes that any funding collected under any existing tax structure be utilized in that same manner. We also recommend that we maintain a yard and dedicated maintenance crew in each district. This is important because of how big we are as a parish. Kevin Guidry was late because of traffic. We don't want work to be inefficient because of traffic. So we recommend that these yards and areas be maintained not as a central operating office or management office, but as a maintenance yard, which is what we're recommending that be facilitated for. And most importantly, we recommend that all employees remain employed by the consolidated districts parish-wide, whether by West Gravity Drainage District or East Gravity Drainage District, that all those existing employees remain employed. So when it comes to a 5-member board structure, our recommendation looks like what you see on that screen. For the west side, there are 5 jurors, so it seems appropriate that each of those jurors have an appointment. You represent approximately the same amount of people. On East Calcasieu, it's a little bit more difficult, but collectively, we think that y'all can appoint a 5-member board that can be great to represent East Calcasieu Parish. But if you'll notice, when we go to a 7-member board, it does lend itself to being more representative, which is why we are recommending that we do go towards that 7-member board system and appoint them as you see up there on that screen today. On the west side, you can see that those appointments, it gets a little bit more, you get a couple more appointments in there. Again, Ward 4 has a large portion of the population, but it's important to not leave out rural areas. The same thing on the east side. While Ward 3 does have the majority of the population, it's important not to leave out the rural areas. I don't think Ward 1 really, for the most part, is rural anymore, but there are a lot of areas in Ward 1 that are rural, so we have to have those considerations in place to make sure that our rural wards and our watersheds are represented, which is why we've structured it the way it is today. So that's just all phase 1, and that's a lot during phase 1. But for phase 2, after a 5 to 7 month period in operation under phase 1, we recommend that the consolidated gravity drainage boards call a replacement millage to be placed on the ballot in the spring of 2020. We also recommend that millage be lower than the lowest existing millage on the east side and the lowest existing millage on the west side. So those millages would be different, but we do recommend a reduction in every ward of this parish, whether it's east or west side. We also recommend that the police jury utilize existing funds to fill a portion of the initial funding difference as a transitional measure not to exceed 3 years. We think that is sufficient time for a transitional measure, while also keeping in mind that the capital investment by the police jury that has gone on for the past 2 years needs to continue long-term, because that is infrastructure that is in demand, and those capital projects are needed to improve, increase the efficiency and the capacity of our existing drainage system. So that's important to keep in mind, that this is different than the capital investment the police jury needs to maintain for years to come, and that's been part of our recommendation in the study as well. So we are at that second yellow circle. We met on the 26th of February where no action was requested. Today we are requesting action on these recommendations to go before the full jury on the 21st. So I hope I didn't take too long, and I'll take any questions from jurors. I know there's some public comment as well.
Do we have any comment from the committee? Mr. Andrew-Pont.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let's go back to the financial phase of your presentation. Okay, all districts utilize police jury for the financial service. Would you, in layman's terms, explain just exactly what that means to me?
Okay.
Maybe everybody else understands it, I don't.
No, so yeah, it's a simple way of putting a big issue, but ultimately we want to ensure that these districts are able to comply with whether it's procurement, investment policies, responsible reporting and audit requirements. That doesn't mean that we want to decide how and what money the districts spend on what they want to do. That is up to the boards. We are recommending 2 boards, and they are political subdivisions of the police jury that are independent. So we're not recommending the police jury make financial decisions for them. We're just recommending that they take over the financial reporting and audit requirements that are required every year.
Okay, what you're saying is that you use the police jury for a backup system, is that, that'd be a good way to put it?
Yeah, I'll let Brian explain.
Mr. Chairman, can I try to
Yes.
take a shot? One way I think you can look at it, Mr. Andrew, in this regard, we do this already for several special districts, some drainage, fire, recreation, so forth. In that role, we are in essence a contractor. What I mean is, because of their size, even the large ones, most of these districts don't have, well, that somebody, for example, to invest public money. We're able to do that and utilize our ability to invest better, and just because of size. Procurement, he mentioned, Alberto, big one there. We have a staff within finance that does this all day, every day for the parish, and they can do that for the districts as well. For example, preparing bid documents, having contract work orders completed. We're not, I think when I've tried to explain this to people, it makes more sense if you say we're doing things that we can do as a contractor they don't have the staff for. And we can do it better because we have the resources here. Now, they pay us a fee for that. I forget if it's 2.25% or 2.5% of expenditures, but it is a very big return on investment when you consider the complexity, and that's insurance requirements. We wouldn't pay for the insurance, we would handle acquiring it and those kind of things. So I think that's more of how I try to explain it to people. We're not doing it separate from them, we're doing it for them as a contractor for that example.
So if I understand you correctly, this would be by request from these boards, or is that mandated, or what?
Well, in this set of recommendations, we would, I guess, word it as that would be something that you as the police jury would require. Now, you currently don't do that for all the districts. It's been more of, do you want to use that service? We encourage it, but we don't mandate it. Here, because you're really trying to address some things identified in the study that needed to be improved. That's a pretty key element if you want this to get better, is our opinion. So it would be more of a requirement that you do this for the drainage districts as consolidated.
We don't do that now.
No.
We do it for some of, the mandated?
Yeah.
No, sir.
Okay. I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Andrew. Mr. Bears?
I've just got a couple things. So in the event of the people that we do it for now, the special service districts that we do it for now, were we retained by them, or did something fall by the wayside and we had to step in? I mean, are there situations like that?
But this goes back many years, by the way. You'll hear a common phrase, the parish does our finances for us. Well, that really, it means a lot more than that now. In the old days, a long time ago, it was just that. But now you have human resource function, processing new employees, handling actual payroll, handling, again, I say it a lot because they do a lot, bidding and procurement. I would say the bulk of those, when they came in, said, this is a good idea, why don't we do that? There's probably been a few cases over the years where they may have run into some trouble and said, we really need to get this to be better. I don't know that any of them were like falling apart at the seams, but it might have been an incentive to change. Because frankly, I'm bragging on our employees now, but it's a very good deal for the money, for the expertise and the simple amount of resources. There's just no way you can ask a small drainage district to do that on their own. It's way too much, and frankly, It's what do you call it? Economies of scale.
Okay. And secondly, the 3-year time frame that the parish would be kicking in the delta or the difference, or the shortfall, I guess it is. When would that actually start?
Well, let me do one thing, and I know Berto can answer all these. Just so we're clear, the question that you and Mr. Andropont brought up, that is I know it says financial, that is a separate issue that we would see as ongoing multiple years beyond 3. The financial part you're asking
correct.
here is the recommendation that there's a transition period of 3 years because of there is a difference in the amount of total revenue from the millages that the police jury, with some details to be worked out, I mean, that there's time, we'd want to work with the new boards for that. It kind of allows the districts we're shifting from more, not total, but more capital coming from the police jury and less from the district so that they can focus those millages mainly on the operational and maintenance. That's something that you wouldn't really want to plan to do that forever, but 3 years we felt is a good transition period.
But from what?
I'm sorry.
From a starting point, so during phase 1, since those funding streams remain the same millage is being assessed and collected, essentially those same pots still exist, there wouldn't be a shortfall during phase 1. So it wouldn't start until the initiation of phase 2, which would be which goes before the voters for a vote. So it doesn't start until spring, till after the election in spring of 2020, because there wouldn't be a shortfall that would exist until then.
Berto's correct. Just the way property taxes work, because I think from a practical level, it might be as late as 2021. Here's why. This is all contingent upon what happens, but if, as he said, the boards are created, they call taxes to replace the current structure, they would do that in the spring of 2020, presumably. That would be a tax that would be officially levied later in 2019. You only levy property taxes once a year. The revenue from those, though, and this is for us in any of the districts, you don't really use those revenues until the following year. So, for example, we're in the 2019 budget year for the parish. You passed a budget in 2018. The 2018 tax levies for all your property taxes are revenues that we use in 2019. So to get to if you really want to get down to it, I don't think that 3-year money issue to help fill that gap would be needed till the 2021 budget year. Now, that's a long way of saying it, but it's not tomorrow, let's put it that way. So there's time to work out how would that work, and it needs some detail, but our goal all along was in the study to say, let's be flexible on that. How do we do that? And those boards are going to have some help giving us input on how that could work.
Thank you, Mr. Barris. Any other comments from the committee? All right, with that, we'll go to public comment. I will remind everyone that tonight we have 4 speakers, and because this is our final drainage meeting, I'm going to give a 5-minute time limit. I want you to understand that tonight you're going to be doing a public comment. So if you address a question, it will be considered a comment tonight, and we will just continue to move on with your presentation. And if one of the committee members choose to pick up that question and refer it back to administration, we will follow that up. Other than that, Mr. Ricky Blackwell. Name and address, please.
Ricky Blackwell, 1421 Forest Lane, Sulphur, Louisiana. You're right, these are questions, but I understand they're not to be answered.
Well, they're questions that we consider comments, and thank you, sir.
That's how I'm making them. What would happen to the policies such as a pipe program in Ward 4 that no one else has? They also have their own spray crew that does the entire district 3 times a year, weather permitting. What happens with that? What happens after consolidation to the inequities in pay from one district to the other for each of the pay grades, operators, driver, truck drivers, and all of these things. And explain how you handling Ward 4 books as opposed to a knowledgeable person in their office manager and local board members from the community is better. Why are you dismantling the boards before going to the public for the vote? And I get not voting on every controversial subject that comes up. That's not what this is, and I understand y'all can't vote on everything that somebody wants to bring up. But the people of each district voted on creation of these boards the way it is. This is a parish-wide decision. Affects every property owner in Calcasieu Parish, parish-wide. How do you not put that before the people? It's not a trivial change. As I said in your legal opinion, you should not be voting on certain ordinances and amending boundaries or even building bridges for your hunting buddy. This is a parish-wide move on things that the voters of Calcasieu Parish created by a vote. Parish set it up, but the taxpayers had to approve it. Someone needs to have the fortitude to make a motion and put this before the people who have to pay for it. You do have the authority to call for a vote of this issue if you so wish. There is no law or statute that says that you can't. And this is a parish-wide issue. It's not a trivial issue. What happens when the parish tax doesn't pass? What's plan B? How do you give the public back their local drainage boards that their tax dollars are paying for? You know that the people can come back and say they want their drainage district, and by a majority of the property owners in said district confronting you can have one. That's how the districts get created. That is the law. Not whether or not you want to vote and have whether you want to have or not have a vote, that's a legal opinion. In 5 years, Ward 4 drainage actually would be able to lower their millage when all these plant expansions and new businesses come off the tax exemptions. But instead, they will they will stay where they are unless you have to raise them to cover the lost tax incomes from the outlying districts. Listen up, Sasol, PPG, and many of the other industries and businesses and homeowners of Ward 4 that could be lowering their tax bill only to pay more. Because as you state, you're only going to subsidize the shortage for 3 years. Then what's going to happen? Any juror on this panel that represents any part of Ward 3 and especially Ward 4 and votes for this is hurting the people they represent. And that's a fact. And I'm sure hoping the voters are listening. And that is a majority of the voters in Calcasieu Parish in Ward 3 and Ward 4. If this is such a good thing, put it before the people. They don't want bigger government. The same people of this parish said 25 years ago they didn't want parish-wide school taxes. Why would you not give them the opportunity to let you know whether or not they want parish-wide service districts? We all know this is only the beginning. Next is the water and the fire boards and then the sacred recreation districts. Put it before the people. And to all the citizens and businesses and industries of Ward 3 and Ward 4, your property taxes will be going up in about 3 years instead of going down in about 5 when all those things roll off. People want smaller government, not bigger. Your tax won't pass. So the people from another district are deciding how your money will be spent. Doesn't make any sense. Outlying districts will not have a majority on either board, on either side of the river, even to spend the money that they have now. You won't have a majority. District 3 and District 4 will have the majority. So you're concerned you don't have enough money now? You won't even have the votes to control the budget that you have now. Unless the parish is going to step in, and then there you go. It's all about controlling money. If not, why are you only shuffling the boards? Barnes districts, headquarters staying the same. Only the boards are going to change. Just need John Q. Public to understand that this has nothing to do with drainage. It's about control. High tides, south winds, and heavy rains dictate our drainage. To control these takes a printing press of money and permits to dam off the marshes and build pumps that will stagnate marine business. And as I was told by somebody on this board, Mr. Cleckley, years ago, that I couldn't say, some places God just didn't mean for you to build. All the new ordinances that were passed earlier by your little group from Lake Charles is so proud of their effects, they're doing, that only affects new development, doesn't do diddly for the existing problems. And to whom it may concern, you know who you are, get with me after the meeting, and I'll get my crayons and paper out, and I'll show you how 2 bigger districts is different from smaller districts and making bigger governments. It ain't hard, and it ain't free, and you're not gonna get more for less. Smaller districts are gonna lose their control, and the larger districts are gonna get less, and the end pay more. Bernie Sanders would be proud. It's just right real close to socialism. We're gonna take from everybody and make sure everybody's okay. That's my opinion.
Thank you, Mr. Blackwell. Next one would be Eric Cormier. Name and address, please, sir.
Eric Cormier, I'm with the Alliance at 4310 Ryan Street in the Chamber Southwest. I'm Vice President of Policy and Strategic Development. First of all, what we want to say, kudos, congratulations for doing something that's pretty good and impressive in Southwest Louisiana. Your staff, your organization put the time in, did the research, came up with a policy. Yes, there are a whole lot of questions, as there is with anything that's new, but anything that moves forward in an area with $109 billion in economic development and something that folks all over the world are looking to make sure that our area is moving forward with its government and its structure. Y'all did the right thing, and we support y'all. And just again, kudos and congratulations.
Got 5 more minutes if you want to repeat it. Thank you, Mr. Cormier.
We don't hear that.
Next. Mr. Charlie Atherton.
Good evening, Charlie Atherton, 122 Vine Street. What I'd like to briefly address is pretty much everything Alberto enumerated, meaning the development, the implementation, the financing, the whole 9 yards. And I'd also like to take this opportunity just to back up just a little bit further and remind you that even before Mark McMurray retired, there have been ongoing discussions among the individual police jurors and also among individual members of the general public about changing or modifying our police jury form of government, especially in the participation process arena. There's a general public concern that our current form of government could and should be improved. Now, just as this jury updates ordinances, the public is also asking that this jury also update the public's participation ability to have the final say over police jury action by providing the public with the process of initiative and referendum. We're asking tonight that you recommend to the full jury that this police jury requests that the powers of initiative and referendum be granted to the people of Calcasieu Parish from the state legislature. And it's very simple. Initiative and referendum says, basically, the electors of the parish shall have the powers to propose to the parish passage or repeal of ordinances and to vote on the question if the parish refuses action. And basically, with what's been going on, especially during your term of office, is this would allow the people to basically have the final say, and to encourage you to take action if there's things that you don't. And my recollection is the immediate use of such initiative and referendum, the public has used it basically to kill red light cameras. But when you look at all the questions and all the concerns from the beginning of you implementing the drainage ordinances to now, I believe that if you gave the people initiative and referendum, I really do believe that would give the public a comfort level and facilitate not only this action but action in the future. So I would ask for one of you tonight on this committee to make the motion and to take action to recommend it to the full jury. And I appreciate your time. Any questions or? Thank
We've
you.
got a couple minutes if you ain't. That's it. Thank you, Mr. Atherton.
I'll save it. I'll make a rain check.
All right.
I got it. Yeah.
Mr. Ralph Lewing.
Ralph Lewing, 2001 Charvet Drive, Lake Charles, Louisiana. I think the first thing I want to say is that being in a position to experience the creation of a new district gives me a little bit more insight as to what people think about, what people see, and the fears of it. And it took us, we started 25 years ago to create Ward 3 Recreation District. And Ward 3 represents about 110, 115,000 people. Mr. Andropont was very instrumental in helping me do that, and Mr. McMillan both, because we had no recreation district on the east side of the river in Ward 3. It took 10 years of hard work to get that district created. And then it took the sun and the moon and the right political bodies lining up to do that. But we got it done. We got it created. And we worked real hard for 6 months, almost a year, to come up with a plan, which the parish approved, and to put out to the voters to fund that district. And it passed 49%, 49.5% or 4% to 51.5%. I mean, but we gave the voters everything they asked for. We did everything we said we were going to do. We lowered our millages. I mean, we actually paid off our bonds 3 years early. And this goes back to the question that, you know, there's been a question brought up of the shortage of funding. Well, Calcasieu Parish is growing every day. Every day, Calcasieu Parish is growing. Every day there's a new business being opened. Every day there's a new home being built. Your ad valorem tax base increases every year. I worked up these projections on this east and west district, and you know, my projections, I mean, I think in a year and a half, these drainage districts are going to be on their way to being well-funded districts with the anticipated growth in Calcasieu Parish. But I want to go back to the recreation district. One of the things we did was we worked with Brian Beam, Mark McMurray back then, and the little lady that handles y'all's financing and your investment. Tammy Buffkin and
Jerry Milner.
Jerry Milner. They set us up. They looked over our books. They helped us manage our recreation district. And one thing I would like to say is never once did we have to worry about anybody looking over our shoulder. You know, I think the only time that we had a police juror show up was Mr. Guidry when he first got elected, and he came in and gave us a really foot-stomping speech about we need to do more for recreation, and he got our attention, and we did. And but it's just from following their guidance, we were able to build a girls' softball complex in South Lake Charles off the money that was invested by Jerry Milner. In 5 years, he made us over $300-something thousand that we used to build that softball complex. It's out there by the airport. So those are just some of the things that come with a well-managed district and more centralized management and more efficiency. And Calcasieu Parish is growing at a tremendous rate. Times are changing. I can appreciate everything that's said here and all the thoughts and things that people think about 25 years ago, but I've seen a lot change too, and what's taking place in the parish, you know, it's time for us to change because the parish is growing into one. I mean, you can just drive through Calcasieu Parish now and you go from subdivision to subdivision to subdivision. And as far as bigger government, I think anytime you can centralize and consolidate something and work within it and follow the guidelines, you're going to have a well-managed plan. Parish has spent a lot of money on these studies. The Alliance spent a lot of money on these studies. I think that this is a good plan. And that's it. That's all I have to say. Thank y'all for your time. And one other thing is I like to think that my police juror, you know, is doing me a good job. I mean, I have full confidence in the guy that represents me in my district. You know, if I didn't, he would be getting a phone call. And I would like to think that each one of you guys listen to your constituents and you vote whatever the constituents wants. And I know there's been times when you've had to vote for things that we thought was good, but your constituents wanted something else, and I can appreciate that. At the end of the day, I can appreciate that. But I think you guys do a good job, and I think the parish reflects it. So
Thank you.
That's all I got to say.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. With that, I do want to make, if I know there's a few jurors in the audience, if you would like to make any comments or you want to save your comments for later, I do want to give you that opportunity. Other than that, I'm going to go back to the committee. Mr. White.
I'd like to first say thank you to everybody who has put time into this, the effort to go into this ordeal that we're going in. It's been a long process. We've heard tonight Parishwide, and if there's one thing that I'd like to put on a ballot for the people was the question, it's a parish ditch or is it a gravity drainage ditch? It's call the police jury. It's their responsibility. Call gravity drainage. It's their responsibility. And ask and see how many people say that they've heard that before. It's time for us to start thinking as one parish, Calcasieu Parish, and not a district or the police jury. It's something we have to do. I said it a long time ago when I first got into office was we need to stop kicking the can down the road, because if we don't stop now, what are we going to have with all this? It's time we make a change, and that's what the people asked us to do, and that's what we're here tonight to do. Thank you.
Mr. Landry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've got a list of items here from the findings that was done in this report that I'm sure most of you have read. I'm going to remind the committee members of those, and as well as the audience. And, you know, there's some that want you to believe that there's nothing wrong out there and everything's fine just the way it is. And that's not true. And the truth, I'm going to read to you. First of all, I guess in reference to what was just said about Jerry Milner investing that money for that rec district and actually paid for softball fields with the interest, that's one of the things I penciled in. There's actually millions of dollars of public money that these drainage districts have on hand that are not being invested. They're not earning any interest. I mean, I'm sorry, that's just not smart business. You know, and really all of the things that I'm going to read here, I don't necessarily blame them. I'd still, at the end of this, I still believe they're doing the best they can do with what they got. And I don't think anything's intentional. But the fact is, our job is to look at the whole parish and all the districts, not just one district that may be doing much better than another. You can't sit here and say there's not problems. These districts have problems, and it is not being run smoothly. I mean, I'm sorry, it's just not. We can put our head in the sand and say it is. So here we go. And this was found, every district had some finding, and some of these are in multiple districts. Not following public bid law requirements for projects, failure to follow budget requirements under state law, failure to provide records and minutes of meetings for several years, even after repeated attempts by our staff to get those minutes. Significant struggle by staff to obtain audited financial statements as required by law, and them being many, many months past the deadline, not a couple of days, months. Failure to obtain needed agreements to provide employees with insurance coverage by the open enrollment deadline. I mean, that's serious. You have employees that they can't get their insurance. Drug screen policies are inadequate to reduce the risk to the entity and the public. Lack of post-accident drug screens in general. Insufficient insurance coverages to actually cover the assets that they own. No training or safety policies. Non-compliance with some state and federal law and regulations like workers' compensation. Not using current human resources laws. None addressed random drug screening, even those most are operating vehicles and equipment and all that. There's no drug screenings being done. Direct violations of law dealing with providing various benefits to employees like life and health insurance. FMLA noncompliance. Inconsistent and incompatible infrastructure. Inconsistent operational policies and practices. They're all doing different things. There's a lack of a coordination between them all. There's no watershed considerations. Now here's a couple of things from an independent auditor's report. There's districts' accounting personnel and those charged with governance in the course of their assigned duties lack capable skills to prepare financial statements according to generally accepted accounting principles. Due to a lack of sufficient financial resources, this cannot be fixed. I mean, you just can't fix that. There's no written policies and procedures concerning purchasing, collections, payroll, contracting, and budgeting. Personnel that approves purchases can also initiate the purchase. And the response of a lack of office personnel to segregate the duties. And some of them, I mean, you're looking at districts that have 2 or 3 or 4 employees. It's impossible for them to do all the things that are required of them and be in compliance with the law. And the last thing, there's many that have no purchase order system in place. They're just going out and just buying whatever they want from whoever they choose to buy from. That's it. So, you know, I ask you to consider all that, and I know there are some districts are run very well, but none are without fault. But there's some, that's not what we're here for. We're here to look at the whole picture. That's what our job is, not just to look at, oh, the district that I represent is great. I'm not worried about everybody else. We can't think like that anymore. We're way beyond that. And if we're going to fix drainage in this parish, we have to consider what's going on in all these districts. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Landry. Any other discussion from the committee? Mr. Barris?
Going back to what Mr. Atherton challenged, Mr. Gabb, can you enlighten me on that? I forget the terminology.
Referendum?
That.
Okay. Let me be very clear, if I haven't been in previous meetings. What has been suggested that you put this before a vote of the people parish-wide, you cannot do. The Louisiana Election Code says that this police jury could only put things on a ballot that are allowed by state constitution or state statute. There is no provision in either the Constitution or state statute that allows this police jury to put anything related to a special service district on a ballot. It cannot be done. So I hope I'm very clear in that regard.
Crystal? I'm good.
Anything else from the committee?
I do have something to say.
Okay, Mr. McMillan.
We are about better drainage, and that's what we've been working on this whole time. Gosh, I guess of everything that Ricky said, we are going to have spraying crews, we are going to have pipe crews, we are going to work out the pay, and the thing you stung us with more than anything is the Bernie Sanders comment. If you go look on my truck right now, you'll see my Trump 2020 sticker there. I'm a Republican guy that's very conservative, and I feel like what we're doing here is we're consolidating to be better, to have better drainage, to work harder to make sure our constituents know that we're up here taking these kind of licks to do a better job for them. And I say it, my voice kind of cracking because, man, I'm just very concerned that people don't realize how hard we've worked at this and how hard and how passionate I am about good drainage in Calcasieu Parish. We've got new technology, we got watersheds, and we got better ways to do this. Working with the parish, smaller boards where you can get to the people both on the east side and west side. We got to drain this entire parish. We got to make sure that this parish is draining. And that's what I'm here about. And that's what this staff has worked hard on to do. And we've listened and we've heard input from both sides. I don't see, after sitting here and listening what Alberto was saying and the comments that were made, this is the way we got to move forward. In my opinion, this is the way we have to move forward because we have to do something. The people out there, I've heard the cries from the folks that are just saying, hey man, you got to do something about drainage. We are doing something about drainage. We're trying to make it better. Now, is there going to be problems? Are we going to have to tweak things? Can we step back and look at this thing one way or another and how do we do things better? Absolutely. It's not going to be perfect. It's not going to work perfect. But being a person that wants to see things done, I'm not afraid to step up and say, I'm for this. And I want to move forward with this. And I want to make sure that the east side and the west side work together in conjunction with the parish so we can get good drainage. Nothing was tougher than me as a police juror. When I had a person with a drainage problem, I had to explain to them that, well, this is a drainage lateral, it's not a road ditch. If it's a road ditch, I could do something about it, but being that's a drainage lateral, I got to go to this drainage board meeting and work with those guys to get it. And a lot of times, Ricky, you did good on some of that stuff. Sometimes we didn't. Sometimes Ward 6 didn't have the money to do it. With it being an east and west, I truly believe in my heart it's going to work better. We need to let this happen, and hopefully the people will go out and vote for lower millages, for better drainage when that comes up in the spring. Nobody's going to lose any jobs. Nobody's going to lose any opportunities of the satellite places that we're still going to be able to get to and work with. I'm just very passionate about this. It's the right thing to do. It's the way we need to move forward right now to help our drainage. I appreciate the chamber, and Ralph, I appreciate y'all in coming up in support of this. And I hope the people of Calcasieu Parish realize we're up here to do the right thing, and we need their support also. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to move to adopt staff's report and make a recommendation that we put this for approval at the police jury regular meeting on March 21st, 2019.
I have a motion by Mr. McMillan and a second by Mr. Guidry. We have any other discussion? Mr. Guidry?
I just want to make one comment, and maybe Mr. Gabb, legal counsel, can help me on this. If we've discussed something in a past
Point of
meeting...
order, Mr. Chairman, we haven't voted on the motion yet.
Thank you, Mr. Andrew Point.
Still in discussion.
Yeah, it's still discussion. We still under discussion. We're not voting yet. I'm on finished discussion.
You don't want me to
That's
talk
it.
now, or you want me to wait?
Since it's you?
No.
This is my daddy right here, y'all. I want y'all to know this is my
We're
daddy.
gonna finish discussion.
Okay, and it's come up before, but you know, we like, and I kind of listen to what Mr. McMillan said on a lot of things. I mean, we've got to move forward. This is long overdue. And what kind of aggravates me a little bit is that when we discuss certain issues in past meetings, they tend to come up again. Can we make a point or something, Mr. Chair, to where if those issues are brought before us again at the mic, can it just be shot down right then and there? Because it's the same issue that we're discussing that we've already discussed in previous meetings. Why should that have to come up again?
Well,
That's the only thing that just aggravates me, legal counsel.
Well, let
Sam?
me say this, and you guys have always been great at allowing public comment and hearing from the people what they want to say. And certainly, our meetings laws encourage that. We encourage public participation. But sometimes you guys have decisions to make, tough decisions. We've had it in zoning cases. We've had it in other ordinance discussions where somebody from the public sits at that podium and not wondering what you guys are going to do would say, hey, wouldn't it be better if the people voted on this? Unfortunately, that's not the way our system works. You guys are elected. State law puts a lot of powers in your hands and makes you guys the decision maker on those things. Whether things get put before a vote is established by state law. State constitution and state law sets what could be put to a vote of the people. And a lot of things fall outside of that and go with representative form of government being you guys. Special service districts is exactly that. Gravity drainage districts are created by resolution of a police jury. That's it. It can't be done by a vote of the people. So I hope I answered your question, Mr. Guidry, but I'm with you. It does come up every now and then that somebody says, we'll put this to vote of the people. Well, you can't do that. That's not the way our system works. You guys are elected to make these hard decisions sometimes, and state law expects you to make them.
Thank you, Mr. Cap.
You good, Mr. Guidry?
Yes.
All right, now I'll make two quick, Mr. Beam, go ahead.
Well, just very quickly, I think because there's so much information, just a reminder on the timeline in the recommendations, which I know there's a motion. The action taken, if approved by this committee as a recommendation and by the full jury, it calls for an effective date of June 24th for those things to happen. And the purpose of that is to have, that would be right at 3 months for a transition period, which you need. So it's one of these things that gets lost in the shuffle, but if tonight and of course on the 21st, whatever action's taken, I want to make sure people don't think, well, this becomes effective the week after. We actually are building in time, and that is a part of this group of recommendations, is that time, and it's in the slides that you saw. So I just want to make sure y'all recognize that, because we really hadn't talked about the timing. June 24th would be the recommended effective date for these recommendations to take place on consolidated districts.
Thank you, Mr. Beam. Once again, I do want to, on behalf of this committee, thank everyone who's put their time into it, from the different groups out there to the individual citizens who's made phone calls to the various emails. That's what it's taken all these years to get us to this point today, to have something that we can present to this parish for progress. And I personally believe it's progress, and I'll wait till March 21st to put forth what I really believe. I'll do a courtesy and not be redundant for you, Mr. Guidry, right now. But I will tell you that I believe this committee's going in the right direction by forwarding this to the police jury. So with that, I will go to the final motion. So I do have a motion on the floor. I have a second. Do I have any objection? Any discussion beyond that? That motion carries. We will move this to the full jury on March 21st. Do I have any other matters before the committee? We are adjourned.
Second.